Dr. Russell Blaylock is with us now for the next 35 minutes or so. We'll get him back up in the next few weeks for a full hour or two to take phone calls. He is a board-certified neurosurgeon, author, and lecturer, attended LSU School of Medicine in New Orleans, and completed his general surgery internship and neurosurgical residency at the Medical University of South Carolina at Charleston, South Carolina. And he ran the neurosurgery program there. He is the inventor of some of the most famous modern forms of brain surgery. It's a very long bio. He's a top brain surgeon and neurologist. So not just in brain surgery, but also overall brain science. He's with us for the next 35 minutes. Doctor, you got on the line before we went to break, and you were laughing during the break saying, yeah, that's right. Don't filter your water and don't eat organic food. They're now, not just in the London Guardian, but all over U.S. television saying it's mentally ill to not want to take your vaccines, to want to eat clean food, to want to filter your water. I mean, this is really getting crazy, Doctor.
Well, they're obsessed with people, avoiding these toxins. The science on the toxicity of fluoridation of water is just extensive. Even the National Academy of Science has completed a huge study which confirmed everything we've been saying in the research literature about toxicity of fluoride. And I wrote a paper along with Czechoslovakian scientists, which is a comprehensive review of the toxicity of fluoride that collects all the research known on it. So this, the research is so extensive. It's ridiculous that we're still adding fluoride to water. Plus the fact that they admit that it has nothing to do with reducing cavities. Even the American Dental Association had to admit that drinking fluoride in water does not reduce cavities one bit. But they're still doing it. Well, you have to ask, why are you doing it then? So that leaves it open to a lot of interpretation why they're doing it. Same thing with organic food. What they did is test the protein content and a few other contents of food in comparative and said, well, there was no real difference. What they didn't test is the most important part of the plant, and that's the flavonoid. There's a significant difference in the two, and in the difference in toxins in the food.
So they didn't test the ring structures, the trace minerals, the cofactors. They didn't test the GMO alterations that are in the GMO.
All this is left out. And, of course, this is the way modern politicalized science does. If you work for government or you work for institutes that are promoting programs, they just manipulate the science, release it to the press. The press regurgitates it. And then all the true scientists out there saying it's a bunch of baloney, they never get interviewed. Their material will never appear in before the public eye. That's just the way they do things. Same thing with the vaccine. What we know about vaccines is so frightening. If the public knew it, I don't think anyone would submit their child to be injected to these things.
Well, yes, sir. This is a short segment, and I want to come back in the next and just sit back and have you go over. They keep accidentally, in quotes, putting live polio in the shots that are killing people all over the world. They keep, in quotes, accidentally, they say, oh, yeah, the 76 and now this new flu, as you know, vaccine is killing people with degenerative nerve diseases. And there's a whole family of those, which for the listeners, so you can speak on that. But just briefly, I'm not on some elite high horse. I don't think of myself, Dr. Blaylock, as a brain surgeon like yourself, BlaylockReport.com. You know, the old pun, he's as smart as a brain surgeon. I just have a good memory. And talking to the public, people around me, I went to a water park this weekend. The public looks like they've been poisoned. Kind of like if you look at cows and say, those cows don't look healthy. They look drugged out. They act mentally retarded. And more, is it watching the TV? We know the studies show that a lot of TV watching can even lower the brain waves over time, retard people's development, kind of put them into a zombie state. But you're the expert on this. But just as a medical doctor and observing people practicing for, 30 years, have you noticed that it seems like people are becoming mentally retarded?
Well, what I have noticed, which I remarked to my office staff, I said, I can't believe the number of young people that are coming into me saying they're having trouble with their memory. I said, when I was growing up, I never heard a complaint that you had trouble with your memory. It was, and when you were young, you could remember everybody's phone number, everybody's name. I could remember where every book in my library was. I could turn to any page. But more and more people are having difficulty with memory and cognitive function that are very young. And so, yes, something is going on, and I think it's, environmental influences.
Environmental influences. Stay there. I want to talk more about that. Dr. Russell Blaylock, BlaylockReport.com. We really are thankful to have him, this eminent scientist, on with us.
Riders on the storm. Riders on the storm. Into this house we're born.
Okay, Dr. Russell Blaylock, brain surgeon, neuroscience expert, joining us right now. We were getting into if people knew how deadly vaccines were, they would never take them. It does seem that's starting to come out. I'm sure, because I've seen you writing on it, for years you've talked about all these degenerative diseases of the brain associated with different things in the vaccines. Not just the one that's making headlines right now that they're talking about, but a whole group of these. But for listeners that just now joined us, one of the headlines is swine flu jab link to killer nerve disease. Leaked letter reveals concerns of neurologist. Over 25 deaths in America just in the trials, and how to keep this secret from the public. And then I have a whole other big stack, top virologist, a whole bunch of top brain scientists, neurosurgeons are saying the same thing in Bild, the biggest newspaper in Germany. They're saying it has live cancer viruses in it. I mean, this is just wild stuff, but I want you to get into that, Doctor. But first, finishing up the break, cut you off, is the sluggishness, the additives, the vaccines, the chemicals in the water? Is it a cocktail of those? Because, yeah, I mean, I guess retarded isn't the word. It's more of a sluggishness, almost a glazed over. Or is it a mix of watching 4.5 hours of TV a day? We're a very passive population. I mean, what is it? Because I look at old black and white photos. I look at old family Super 8 video or video or film shot 20, 30, 40 years ago of my family. They're alive. They look awake. I mean, it's not nostalgia. Something real is going on there. What is taking the spark out of people from your research?
Well, I think if we look at it, and a lot of scientists are beginning to agree with this, is a number of environmental assaults on people, things like fluoride in water, the heavy use of pesticides and herbicides. It's all in the atmosphere. You know, when they study people, look at their fat content of these chemicals, they find something like 80 to 110 different organic chemicals from industry, pesticides, and herbicides in their tissues. All of the vaccinations, we give 40, 50, 60 vaccines by the time a child enters college. They're just being vaccinated to death. Well, I do rather intense research in the literature, collecting all that's known from our research in the neuroscience of vaccination and what it does. Well, there's this compelling evidence that these vaccines, the way they're being given, is producing a state of chronic brain inflammation. And that when your brain is chronically inflamed, it produces depression, it produces disorientation, confusion, difficulty thinking clearly, just clouded thinking in your mind, fatigue, abnormal behavior, even violent behavior, criminal behavior, suicide, addictions. The list just goes on. And this is all well demonstrated in the scientific literature. The problem is it's never discussed because the pressure and the power of those that are promoting these vaccines in our children. For instance, the average child's getting 36 vaccines by the time they start school. That is an enormous assault on the brain by this vaccine. And the process by which they do it, that is spacing them every 2 months and giving 5 and 6 and 7 vaccines at each office visit, produces an enormous activation of the brain's immune system in a prolonged way, and each section or segment of that vaccination process produces a real hyperintense brain inflammation that in some children produces autism, some ADHD, some have seizures, some have other neurological dysfunctions. Well, this whole flu vaccine thing, they're planning on doing 3 serial vaccines within 21 days. Well, if you look at the neuroscience of that,